walk down and flush them out.
Welcome to the Hearts of Men podcast, a journey into the depths of men's hearts where courage meets vulnerability and wisdom embraces integrity. In a world that often measures a man by his outer achievements, this podcast dares to explore what truly defines a man of character. We unpack the challenges and triumphs that shape men's lives, bringing to light stories of resilience, compassion, and unshakable faith. We believe that the heart of a man is a treasure trove of untold stories, powerful lessons, and profound wisdom. Through authentic dialogues and insightful discussions, we aim to unlock these treasures, one story at a time. So, whether you're seeking guidance, inspiration, or simply a moment of reflection, you're in the right place. Get ready to be challenged, inspired, and transformed. And now, to guide you through this journey of discovery, please welcome your host, a visionary leader and a true catalyst for change, Dwayne Dwyer, but we affectionately know him as the Mindset Coach.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Hearts of Men podcast. We're your host for this week's conversation. My name is Dwayne Dwyer. I go by the Mindset Coach, and I'm affectionately joined by my brothers. On one side, I have Mr. Garfield Martin himself, also known as the Uncle Junior, and we also call him the Consistency Coach. On the other side of me, we have Mr. Roland Walker himself, Mr. Poor Man's Dr. Phil, also Mr. Shift Happens. Below him, we have Mr. Tawami Gaddy, the son of Timothy, also known as the Available Man. And by his side, soon to join us, we have Mr. Christopher McClellan, also known as from across the table with Christopher McClellan, also known as the guy trying to understand. Gentlemen, how are you doing on this beautiful Friday evening?
I am doing well. Long week. Had some computer issues, had some power outages this week, but hey, I'm here making it and excited to be back with these gentlemen again today.
Smooth sounds coming from Uncle Junior.
Already make me want to,
put the Midnight Madness.
They make you want to put your Barry White on, but nah, I'm doing good. It's been like Uncle said, it's been a long week. Man, the enemy has tried me this week, but we are maintaining. We still pushing.
Spring break. All I'm gonna say. Spring break coming up. It's about to be around here like the little old lady with the shoe or whatever, that nursery thing with a bunch of kids. I'm about to have the grandkids. So yeah.
I didn't even know it was spring break. Terrible. But good. I'm happy to hear that everybody had a great week. I had a great week as well. A little minor adjustment on my behalf, but all is well. And as always, I look forward to fellowshipping with my brothers. But if I can generously speak for you guys, I know we all look forward to fellowshipping with everybody who joins us every week. And because on this platform, we like to mention people by name, we would like to say, good to see you, Cassandra McKenzie, Nick D, Michelle Ray, Crystal Everett. Always good to see you guys. Miss Lisa Keys, welcome. And Miss Verlene McCoy, also known as Queen V. Listen, if this is your first time joining us, if you're on YouTube, look in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and locate the YouTube icon. Put your cursor on that icon and, select the flyout. It's going to say subscribe. Go ahead and click the subscribe button. But here's another piece. Do not forget to click the notification bell. Don't just click the bell, click the drop down beside the bell, and then select all. That way you know every time we go live on this platform. I would be remiss if I don't recognize the fact that this entire month is Women's History Month, and today is, what is it, International Women's Day? I think that's what it is. So I want to say again, we are celebrating women all month, and also happy International Women's Day from this panel to you, every woman out there. We appreciate you and we value you. So that being said, we're going to go ahead and dive right into this thing because I think that covers all of my public service announcements. Have you ever felt overwhelmed by the emotional demands of helping others to the point where you yourself, your own well being started to suffer? Tonight's dialogue aims to dive deep into the nuances of what we call compassion fatigue, exploring its causes, symptoms, impact, and importantly, strategies for prevention and recovery. We will discuss the delicate balance between caring deeply for others and maintaining one's well being, highlighting the critical role of empathy, self care, and support in navigating these challenges. Our conversation is structured around key questions that aim to unpack the complexity of compassion fatigue, differentiate it from related conditions like burnout, and examine the role of empathy in its development. We will explore how individuals and organizations can create a culture of compassion that supports both the caregivers and those they care for, ensuring sustainable and effective care delivered. Through this discussion, we aim to provide valuable insights for professionals in caregiving roles, organizational leaders, and anyone interested in fostering empathy and compassion in their work and communities. Understanding compassion fatigue is the first step towards building resiliency, promoting wellness, and ensuring that those who dedicate themselves to helping others do not lose sight of their health and happiness. Join us as we embark on this enlightening journey, aiming to shed light on compassion fatigue and empower individuals and organizations with knowledge and tools to address it. Whether you're a caregiver experiencing the signs of compassion fatigue, a leader seeking to support your team, or simply interested in learning more about this important issue, this conversation is for you. So I think I kind of just want to, before we get into it, I kind of want to unpack some things so that we can understand. Um, First and foremost, um, I want everybody to understand that we are a group, a panel of individuals who are subject matter experts of our own perspectives. We don't claim to know everything, but what we do know, we really believe in, we share it with you in such a way that we do not intend to offend anyone whatsoever. So, with that being said, I want to make sure that everybody understand that. Okay. That said, gentlemen, I just want to drop the first question in your lap. It's a simple one. What is it? What is compassion fatigue from your understanding?
I'll go first. When I looked at this, it kind of reminds me of secondary traumatic stress, and that's like something, as a school counselor, a lot of counselors or nurses, people who take on not the responsibility, but they take on other people's feelings. Like as a counselor, I talk to students about traumatic experiences, about things they've been through. You know what I mean? You name it, they've been through it. So sometimes what they do is they start taking on some of those feelings, because they're so when not necessarily, mainly because it's part of the job. And sometimes, when you hear sad things, sometimes it makes you feel sad too. So when you're in a profession, to whereas this is something that happens all the time, I think, like I said, it is very relatable to secondary traumatic stress. So that's kind of how I looked at it when I first saw it.
I think this is something that
Um,
I I go that I had gone through and during my time being a medic when we were going back and forth overseas in different situations where I had soldiers that I had to help because they fell in line with this, with exactly what Unc was just saying, because situations would occur where they would feel the pain of the victims, feel the pain of the people that were hurt, and they wanted to act out because over time it starts to weigh on them. And when you don't have a place to set that down or to give that up, it weighs you down to a point to where you're no longer useful to anybody. You are actually a detriment to yourself and everyone around you.
So one of the things what both my brothers said are some of what I picked up when looking at this, because that idea of secondary trauma stood out. But for me, I look at it as I put it together. I look at it as self-care neglect, um, because I think as I self-evaluate, and sometimes I have to see have I ever gone there or been in danger of being there, and sometimes we worry or we care so much about others, and we are so built and so conditioned to help others that we tend to neglect ourselves and doing self-care and taking care of ourselves, getting ourselves checked out, talking to somebody for ourselves, and handling our own problems that eventually it's not. And I don't know if burnout would be the right word, but you get to a place to where you realize all of your stuff is piling up and it's weighing on you, and now you go through this period. You see a lot of people who go through this period of I'm just worried about me this season. I'm concerned about me this season, uh, versus having a moment in time to where we're constantly making sure ourselves are not neglected in the realm of taking care of others, of worrying for others, of counseling others, of caring for others, that we make sure that our stuff don't fall by the wayside, that our problems get taken care of and our traumas get dealt with along the way.
First of all, greetings, everyone. How is everybody doing this
What's up,
evening?
brother?
To answer this question, I have no idea. I don't know what compassion fatigue is. This is the first I've ever heard of it. When I saw the title of the show, I just looked at it for what it is. It's fatigue from showing compassion. But outside of that, I don't know.
Okay. All right. Let's kind of continue to unpack it just a little bit. Uncle Junior, you addressed it as secondary trauma, and that is an accurate assessment as well. But if you don't mind, can you kind of like help us to understand secondary trauma? Because I don't want to leave anybody else out there on the island. Like when we say secondary trauma, first thing that comes to my mind, I look at, and I hate to say it this way, but it's like thinking about secondhand smoke, right? You're not necessarily smoking a cigarette, but you're affected by the cigarette smoke. So when you say secondary trauma, if you don't mind, kind of unpack that for us, sir.
Well, honestly, I think that's a good analogy. You know what I mean? Um, some of us have people that whenever they're going through something, they call us and they want to talk about it. Sometimes they actually want to fix the problem, but I think I heard Roland or someone say, might have been a post or something, that after a certain amount of times, you're just looking for attention or somebody to side with you. You're not necessarily looking for somebody to help you work through the problem. So I guess, to kind of make it more clear is that, secondary trauma is like what you said, the secondhand smoke is, when you're constantly listening to people's trauma and what goes on in their life, that stuff can start to affect you. And sometimes, especially as men, well, not even just men, but just people who want to help people and fix people's problems. You know what I'm saying? And what can happen is this can burden you to where you're up night, sleeping, can't sleep, thinking about what's going on in coach's life, you know what I'm saying, or what's going on in Roland's life, because every time coach called me, he telling me something, or he got something going on. And then Roland always calling me and telling me what he got going on. And then Twami got something to say and Chris got something to say. So every day I'm bombarded with information and people telling me all of their problems. And if I'm their friend, or they're a homeboy or a wolf pack member, then what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to at some point want to support them and help them out. And like someone said, when it son of Timothy said, when it, part of it um gets rough when people don't do the self-care part of it. You know what I'm saying? So if you don't take care of yourself and you don't set boundaries and stuff like that, then this secondary trauma situation can be really it can be very traumatic for you. It can cause you physical problems, like it's like you said, secondary smoke, you know what I mean? The secondhand smoke, you can have side effects from someone who actually smokes. So you can have some of the same side effects from listening and always being engaged in somebody else's problems.
I like that analogy. Give me 1 second, Roland. I'm gonna give it to you. I like that analogy because you attempted to go someplace and you pulled back, and I caught you. But we're gonna go there tonight anyway. So I just want to make sure because I don't want to. I don't want people to think it's just a switch on and off. If you work in this particular industry, then you're the only person that's subject to it. But because I don't work there, I'm not subject to it. That's not true, right? Everybody is subject to it. And what I want to do later on, as we continue to unpack this thing, I want to talk about, what compassion fatigue look like for men in the different roles that they play, what it look like for women in the different roles they play, so forth and so on. Roland, go ahead, sir.
No, I was just going to jump on board with what Uncle is saying, because this is something to where not that you just want to help them, but you take on the responsibility to fix their problems. You make it yours, so the onus is on you, because you have the mindset to say, I gotta make it, I gotta fix this, I gotta, so your actions become like, when something is going on with them, it's going on with you. May not have anything to do with you, but you've taken on the responsibility. And when you do that, then you make it yours. So the stress that comes with it is yours. The everything that comes with it that's good or bad is yours. So now you're not only worried about your situation and your problems, you put your stuff to the back burner to fix this.
That's good. That's
Yeah, and I
good.
think, even
Okay.
to piggyback off that, I think, when it becomes trauma is when it becomes a detriment to yourself. You know what I mean? When you can't sleep at night, or when you're constantly thinking about them, or when it's affecting you. You know what I'm saying? So I think there is a point to where you can go to where you're helping and it's not trauma or it's not causing you stress. But I think at some point the scale tips to where it can start affecting you, especially if you don't have any boundaries set in place or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to, Roland, I want to go to your point of view earlier. You talked about your soldiers, especially when we were doing all of the deployments back and forth to Iraq, Afghanistan, things of that nature. How did, if you don't mind sharing, um, how did they deal with it? How did you have to help them deal with it, so forth and so on? Like, what was that like?
Well, you remember back then, Captain Sylvester. So
Hmm.
we had a good leader that would pull us to the side and allow the leaders to sit us down so we can talk it out. So, and then when you talk it out and realize that, hey, these cultures are different. So I think talking it out and being able to identify where you are in the situation, it allows you to say, hey, this ain't even mine. I'm taking on the responsibility of this thing, and it's not mine. I don't have to look at it as if we were in Virginia, New York, or Alabama, because we're in another country and they think totally different about life and everything they're in. So when you are able to talk to one another about it, who are actually going through it with you, then it's a better, I think it's a better outcome, because it's a group setting, and then you don't have that alone feeling. Like, so it's not a woe is me, it's a, man, I'm in this with everyone here, and if I have to talk, I can talk about it. I don't have to be afraid to open up about my feelings.
Which is great, but let me, and I hate to pry, and if I'm prying, let me know. Um, how did you know? Or how did he know? How did Captain Sylvester know? Because Captain Sylvester was an awesome guy. I love Captain Sylvester. How did he know that they were experiencing compassion fatigue?
Well, I knew when we went to the gate, and we saw how they treated people who were dying, where they would just take them and they would dump them, or they had the, excuse me if anybody may be traumatized by this, but they would dip the infants in burning oil and they would bring them to us. And now these people, they're smoking and joking, and to us that's something that's dire. That's something that's crazy to us, so we didn't look at it the same. We had a love for life so much to where we're looking at like, man, you have no respect for these people enough to give them to us in a sane manner, at least. And when we seen, I had one soldier who wanted to lock and load and actually do some damage to the people because of how they were responding. So when you see they're overheated and overreacting, or not even overreacting, but can't control their emotions and reactions, then something is needed so you can dial that back before it blows up, before it goes overboard to where something happens. Then next thing you know, we on CNN.
Can I ask a favor? When we speak on this, can we try to find a way to tie the military side of it to the civilian side of it? Because I'm just a regular dude. Like, I don't know what y'all went through in the military. So it's difficult for me to wrap my head around it. Like, even when I hear stories from my little cousin who's a Marine, or my little brother who was a reserve, like I just don't get it. So is there a way that we can kind of tie those together, just for my sake, and maybe some of the people that, you know what I'm saying, are in the same position that I'm in, that didn't serve in the military but still want to know what this is because they might be affected by it and don't even know it. You understand what I'm saying? Like, can we find a way to tie to bridge the gap?
I like and appreciate that. And when I was growing up, I had aunties and uncles, and you had a lot of people who were on substances. They all dealing with their own demons. So when you see them going through, you see it's hurting their families. You see it's tearing their families apart and tearing them down. Me, I took it upon myself to where I didn't want to see that happen to them, but I couldn't stop it because it's a choice that they're making. So it was always one of those things that even though it was hurting me, I would out the same thing that's killing them, I'm giving them. I'm giving it to them. So because to me, it's easing my pain so they don't have to be out here stealing and killing and doing all other type of things. And I'm looking at it like I don't know if you ever seen the movie with my man from the Five Heartbeats and Wesley Snipes, Sugar
Oh,
Hill.
yeah, Sugar Hill.
With the father,
Right.
was it?
And
Yeah.
at one point, he gave his father the same thing that was killing him slowly. He gave him something that was going to push him over the limit. And it becomes a point where you're holding that burden so much because these people, they're doing damage to themselves or things are happening to them. So now you take it on. It's the same thing when you have a daughter or a sister who's being abused, and now you take on that responsibility. We have a lot of us that are behind bars from situations like that because that situation kept happening. She kept taking it back and kept happening. Now you want to step in and you say this ain't gonna happen no more. And next thing you know, you do something that costs your freedom.
You know,
let me hold on 1 second. So, Chris, just to kind of make it make sense to Roland's military experience, think of kind of like first responders. Like, and I've been watching Chicago Fire, so I'm all about this right now. So, so think of the first responders go out. You got the firefighters that go out to fight the fire, right? But they have a medic team with them as well, right? That's who Roland was in the Army for us. Like, we'll be out there doing our thing, moving to contact, fighting war, whatever the case may be. But Roland was like the first responder. So him and his team, they would be the ones that see the first initial blast, which is probably the worst of all of it. So that's kind of like a easy way to kind of make it make sense. If that kind of clears up what he was talking about when he was talking his military service.
see, for me, we're using the analogy that Roland used. I think more, at least for me, culturally, right? Because when you think about a burnout and then you think about how the mental reaction, because he's talking about how they were able to see based upon the reaction of the soldiers to what was coming. And when you look at our culture, and I can only speak from my time frame, right? So I have to go with the 80s, 90s, right? A lot of people that I knew that was on drugs, and no disclaimer, one of them was my mother, right? The fatigue was the feeling of running an endless race of trying to just maintain and take care of of family and take care of community, whatever the case may be, when it kept feeling like culturally like we were running into brick walls, like felt like there were blockers. This is why, people get so angry that's still in the inner cities that hear, oh, get over it, that was 8,000 years ago. Like, no, it wasn't that long ago. We still got some racist laws on the books today that they're arguing whether or not to get rid of, right? Or whether or not they should get rid of the 3/5 of the law out of the Constitution that's still written, but that fatigue of because he used the term inhumane. My reference point back to that is, listen to the conversations that our parents had back in the days when they're talking about the things that they felt were in the way at the time, the hurdles they had to get over. And when and a lot of people reverted back to what, instead of, staying lock, cock, and trying to react, a lot of people went to the bottles. A lot of people went to the needles, went to the pipe. That was their way of relieving the pain. But the fatigue is still there, just waiting for you to come back off that high. You get what I'm saying? Like, so, and that's not everybody's story, but culturally, that's a large part of our stories, especially during the height of the war on drugs and the war on crime. That's what led to the flood, the floodgates opening up to alcoholism and junkies in our neighborhood. A lot of people couldn't deal with the fatigue no more.
You muted, Coach.
My bad. Let's continue. What's wrong, Chris? You about to say something?
I'm synthesizing.
Okay, gotcha.
I am synthesizing.
Gotcha. Let's continue to dive down this road, Brother Gaddy. You said it. You view it as a neglect of self-care. If you don't mind, kind of unpack that. Like, why did you go the self-care route? Not that it's bad or anything of that nature. Just kind of unpack that. Why self-care, and how does self-care, or the lack of self-care, if I will, lead to compassion fatigue?
Oh man, so for me, I don't look at it as an overnight thing. I look at it as a slow grind to denial of self, right? Because Coach on kind of went there a little bit. It's like, I take on Roland's calls, right? And I'm helping and I'm dealing with my brother, and maybe it's a characteristic thing, maybe it's something, whatever the case may be, that he leaned on me, but Chris sees the same thing and he calls me, and I take it on. And if I'm not careful, by the time I take on Unc's call, I don't really have time for myself. I no longer call Coach because I need him, because everybody else is calling me, everybody else needs me, or some people is organizations. I'm jumping out and doing this outreach, and I'm out here doing this feed the community, and I'm out here doing this drive, and eventually, especially when you're doing good work and people see the passion you have for compassion for people, you tend to be the go-to, right? And it's not a bad thing, but what tends to happen is that becomes your everyday norm. The moment you're not working, you're worrying, you're listening to calls from your brother, from your nephew, from your cousins, from anybody. Some families is even from your aunties, right? I know I had to say it that way on purpose, being funny, from your aunties and from and from your grandparents, because people, your cousins ain't acting right or whatever the case may be. But if you are not careful and if you do not set the boundary, even if that boundary is a time limit, before it's unknowingly you're not taking care of yourself. You still have troubles that's piling on. You still have issues that's bottling up. And when you're done thinking about so and so, when you're done taking care of so and so, you sit down and you get time to relax. You realize you can't relax because you have this going on. When you constantly looking for those moments of relaxations, but they're not there because you don't have time to take care of the things you need to take care of, right? It may not be you need therapy too. It may be, you just need to go, you need to go for a walk. You need to find you gym time. You need to, whatever the case may be, but you don't have time for you. After a while, you will feel neglected from yourself. You will feel like, and sometimes it's easy to put that off on others, because once you get into that fatigue, somebody said in the chat, you really, your thought process become impaired. Now it's Roland's fault for calling me so much that I'm not being taken care of, and I'm out here worrying about everybody else, and ain't nobody worried about me. Well, because you're not worried about you, right? You're worried about Roland because Roland worried about himself enough to call you. And everybody else, they worried enough about themselves to find someone that can help, that can listen. And so you, as much as you are that person, you have to as well have that person, because that fatigue, that neglect of self, you feel it, but you can't blame everybody else. They're trying to get self-help as well. And so you need to search out your space and your place and your time. Time is the first thing that's important. If you don't create time for you to take care of yourself, you won't find a person to call. You won't find a salon to go get your nails done. You won't find a gym because you don't have the time. And when it feels like time is running out and your back is against the wall, sometimes all you can do is just sit there and just, and I use, for lack of better terms, but just sit there and cry, because it's like, I don't know what to do next. And while you crying, guess what? Somebody else is going to call you. Fatigue has a setting. My bad.
Yeah, I think this brother here was about to say something. He was raising his hand a few seconds ago.
Yeah, because I think in an easier way I have a daughter who has a whole husband here. And when she first got married, I had to do everything around the house, I thought. So if the fence broke down, I'm over there. If the grass need cutting, I'm over there. Whatever she needed, I'm feeling like I got to do it. I got to do it. If I don't do it, it won't get done. And then it's like, after a while, the resentment starts to set in, like, God, no, y'all can't do nothing. But I wouldn't allow them the space to do anything, because if I saw something, because every time I go over, I'm looking for something, because I want to make sure my baby's all right. So I'm over there like, okay, what's going on here? I'll be back. Oh, you need that? Just call me. And then when she would call me, because she got in that same habit, it became a thing where I was always over there. It's like, God, I'm running 2 households. So now my wife said, that ain't your house. She got a whole hood. Let her do it. Let him do it. And I'm like, but she's like, no, it's his job. It ain't your job no more. You gave her to him. Trust that he gonna do it. And I had to step back and say, man, it was stressing me out for a while. But then after I stepped back and saw, man, they can handle this. I had, because I was frustrating myself and going through off of stuff that I saw needed to be done. But instead of guiding, I do it myself. And that's a way on the civilian side, that fatigue can set in as well as a parent.
Respectfully, that sounds self-induced, because you took it upon yourself to do that. I'm still trying to understand the compassion fatigue part of it. But if I'm listening to what you're saying, and I'm taking it all in, and I'm I'm really, really trying. It sounds to me like compassion fatigue is being tired of having a feeling over something or having a feeling for someone that's making a choice and you can't change the choice. If that makes any sense.
I think it is self-induced in a large way. Which is why I say I use the term self neglect of self-care, or even just self-neglect, because I am choosing to take on so much. I am choosing to take on everyone else's problem. I am choosing, and coach said, it is me who's not creating those boundaries, and so it will lead to fatigue. But it's not necessarily somebody else's fault. But it becomes easy, and I like the way Roland put it. The term he put, it's easy to have resentment when you get to that fatigue, because you're looking for somebody to help take on your load because you're taking on everybody else's load. And so it's easy for me to go ahead. My bad.
I'm sorry. I think there are certain jobs where it may be more prevalent, whether you're in the police force, the fire department, social workers, people of that nature that work directly with people and people's problems. They tend to take on those people's problems as their own.
You know what? You're right.
Right.
You're
It
right.
may not just
You're
be
right.
a parent, but when you take on other people's problems, you're doing it starting out to help. But then the more you do it, the more you say, okay, I gotta do it. And then
I used to see that a lot working in juvenile court. So I get that side of it. I used to see that a lot. Like a lot of these magistrates, a lot of these clerks, and a lot of these mediators, they actually this is a lot. Like a lot of them sometimes have to take breathers. I've seen mediators actually do one mediation and say, I can't do this for the rest of the day because this right here was too much. So, okay. I get what you're saying on that side of it. Okay.
Sometimes it's ego. Sometimes it's ignorance. Sometimes we just don't know. It comes in all different shapes, sizes, and forms. Sometimes, when we mention certain jobs, you're doing it, you don't have any control. You just don't understand why you're stressed or why you can't sleep. Sometimes you just don't know. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's ego. Sometimes people want to be that person that someone can always depend on, you know? But at the end of the day, I think that the fatigue happens again when it becomes a detriment to yourself. You know what I mean? When you are starting to feel some sort of negative effects in your life. You know what I mean? And here's a good one is with money. You know what I mean? Sometimes people don't have money and they keep giving, right? And some of that fatigue comes in when you having a hard time paying your rent. You know what I mean? And when you get paid, you thinking about giving somebody else some money. You know what I mean? So I think it's and more than the or.
But see, and you'll understand where I'm coming from when I say this. And this is kind of why I really don't feel like I could add anything to the show,
The
because
questions and the inquiry on your part adds to the show.
okay, so I'm going to be constantly asking questions because one, I used to work in retail, so I used to get paid to hear the word no. So I'm kind of over that side of it. And secondly, I kind of took an oath about 20 years ago to not do anything or try to help anybody if it hurts me at the same time. And since I took on that obligation, I also said that I wouldn't accept help from somebody if it hurts them. So I'm still trying to understand this.
So I'm loving the dialogue. I'm loving everybody's perspective. And eventually we're getting to a point of understanding as we continue to unpack a lot of this, right? I like the fact that Roland, you brought up the profession piece because that's exactly where I was going to go. Some people are in a profession, and again, keep in mind when they got into it, they got into it at a very young age. They're in a profession to where they're working a system, but then by that same token, they may not have necessarily had the level of resiliency that they need to be in that system. And so over a period of time, you start experiencing what Roland talked about in relation to his soldiers. And then when that fatigue set in, you become callous, you become very cold. It just becomes like a thing. It is what it is. You know what I'm saying? He started talking about these bodies that were coming in. It's like, oh, it's just a thing. And somebody else who don't know what compassion fatigue look like, they see how this person is reacting and behaving, and it's like, whoa, something's not right. Right. And so I like the fact that you mentioned Captain Sylvester, because very astute young man. He was very keen on a lot of these things. And I'm not gonna lie, he taught me a lot when I went to see him as well. So we got to understand that from a professional side. It's not just those in the medical field. It's also those in the like the police force. It's firefighters. It's those in the military. It's like those people who are constantly doing something for other people because it's a part of their profession. On the other side of it, you have some people, and I'm gonna say it this way because I think this is really what it is most of the time. You look at helping people as a part of your identity, right? And so you
Like you
don't
have to
feel
do it.
right. You don't feel fulfilled unless you're doing something for somebody else, right? And you will drop everything that you're doing because, and you're constantly in that mode. In fact, you're looking for it to happen. And so service is not so much a thing for them, it becomes more of a thing for me. And then eventually I start burning myself out. Right. It's not getting out, it's not burnout, but I'm getting to the point that I'm getting tired. I'm getting callous. It becomes rudimentary, right? Like it's a thing. It doesn't really matter. I can't even connect with you because it's just so much of the task of doing the thing itself. Does that make sense?
Yes, but the way you explained it makes it sound like a good thing. Compassion
Mm,
fatigue might be a good thing because it might be your
mm.
body telling you that you need to stop doing this because it's hurting you.
But most people, those people I won't say suffer from it, but those people who have it, they don't know they have it. They need somebody on the outside of them to tell them in most cases.
Okay, so we're putting a name on it because, like I said, I've never heard this before.
I didn't put a name on it. Those people in the medical profession put a name on it. It's a real thing, man. It's a real thing. Look at it like this. Remember how, and most people can relate to this. Most people never heard of PTSD until like Iraq. Once the military started going back and forth to Iraq, then the thing PTSD came out, and then they had to go all the way back to Vietnam veterans, and they had to grandfather them into PTSD because they had no idea what it was back then. And really, PTSD is ultimately it's a form of depression, but it goes a little bit further than that. It goes along with some symptoms that kind of put you right back into the thick of it, even though you're safe at home. You have night traumas, you have night terrors, things of that nature. It's a lot like that, right? It's not that extreme, right? But you'll still go through those things. And here's the funny part about it: those of us, and I'm saying this, I'm being realistic. Those of us who were diagnosed with it had no idea we had it because it was a way of life. I don't know if Roland thinking it, but he looking at the ceiling. Okay, you good? You got unstuck.
I hear you. Say again?
Which one?
No, you called me.
Yeah, I thought you were stuck. You were like looking at the ceiling. I thought you were posing or something. I didn't know. So you did it again.
And now
My
you're about to say, now you're pointing.
My door opened up, so
Oh, okay, gotcha.
I love it here.
But so everybody good on the understanding of compassion fatigue now.
I'm still synthesizing.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. Unc, you was going somewhere. Michelle Ray, first and foremost, I want to say thank you. And again, we appreciate those people who gift the channel. Again, we try to do a lot for you on this channel. If you're on YouTube, look in the pin. You have a pinned message at the top of YouTube. It is a free download for you so that you can do some self-reflection on yourself as it pertains to compassion fatigue. This is something I'm going to do every week going forward. So I want you guys to start looking for it. Again, if you're on YouTube, look at the pinned message up top, and you should get a free download for compassion fatigue. Also, regardless of what platform you're on, it doesn't matter if you're on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, whether you're on LinkedIn, whatever, go ahead and hit the like button. Hit the like button. That way we can appreciate you again. So, I'm sorry. So just show that you appreciate what these young men are bringing to the table and having this conversation about. So again, I want to make sure that we are continuing to unpack this thing when it comes down to it. Unc, you went a direction. Wait, hold on. We got a question. Are you saying we can neglect our responsibilities to fulfill our need to feel needed? Yep, that's exactly what I'm saying. Spot on.
I had to read that like 3 times. And it yeah. Okay.
Came full circle just now, didn't it? I love
What
it.
does it sound like to you, Chris?
Well, it like I said, man, it sounded like the oath I took. I'm helping people, but it's hurting me at the same time. I gotta fulfill a response. I'm neglecting myself trying to fulfill a responsibility to feel like somebody needs me. Like I need me. So I gotta, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I can't accept anything from anybody if it's gonna hurt them. You know what I'm saying? I would never accept anything from anybody if it puts them at a deficit. That's selfish. Like, why would you do that? You understand what I'm saying? So, yeah, I get it.
Now, Unc, you went someplace. I want to go back there real quick, right? How do and we're gonna do both sides because we got to be fair, right? When it comes down to men, like how can men get to the point where we experience compassion fatigue? Is it possible? Do men experience compassion fatigue?
Man, yes. And I'll say this. I experienced a lot of it in my first 19-year marriage. And I'm not going to sit here and trash my ex-wife on any platform. I will say that in 19 years, I experienced a lot of compassion fatigue. When you are a young man, when you get married you have a child at 19, you get married at 20. One of the things that, especially when you're a young man and you haven't been taught by other men, one of the things you do is, in some cases, you haven't grown into your big boy shorts yet. So what you do is you take on a lot of other people's problems, right? So whatever they're going through in their life, that becomes part of your problem, right? So when she's having a bad day or when she's on her cycle, I understand, difference between being there for somebody, but when you've been told your whole life that, women are the prize and that, I'm trying to keep it
I got you.
as which college is, I can't even think of the word. But when you go through life a certain way, and then, man, I'm trying to get it out in a nice way.
When you
It's
are instructed of what your identity is, and you try to live a life of trying to fulfilling the roles of what you were told that identity is, as opposed to understanding what your true identity is.
There you go. So what happens is in doing that marriage or doing that long-term relationship, a lot of things are put on you and you don't necessarily know how to deal with them. You don't know how to communicate well, effective communication. You don't really know anything about self-care. So what happens is sometimes, you walk around on eggshells. You're scared to say certain things for fear of causing an argument. So I think that those are just some of the things that, kind of that men go through when they're in relationships, until sometimes we grow up or we get the understanding of how we come into our own identity and we kind of learn to set boundaries or accept certain things and not accept other things. When you don't have boundaries and stuff like that in relationships, and you just let anything happen and you don't have any structure or anything like that, it could be any relationship, then these are some of the things that can negatively affect you. So I think I'm gonna stop there before I start babbling on too far.
No, you good. Self care for men. Cut the grass and wash the car. What else y'all got, brothers?
Hey, but Unc is on to something to me when you talk about this compassion fatigue in men. I think is right up that alley. And it's not just with how we supposed to treat women. We were taught to do. Well, here's the thing. When I grew up, I lived in a project, so the grass we did have, the city came and cut it when it got too bad. We didn't cut grass. We didn't do all that. We shoveled snow when the snow came, But uh, when I joined the military and I moved to the South, I was, and I got around men who owned property. It was that same jargon. The men do this, the men fix everything, the man clean the cars, the man cut the grass, the man, and this is what we're taught. But we're never taught what the man is supposed to do to take care of himself, and so we have lived with the expectation, kind of like what you said earlier, Coach, when you said about PTSD. It was just a way of life. We thought the neglection of oneself as a man always is being a man. The moment you worry about yourself, you being sassy, you being sensitive, you being feminine. You're not supposed to care about yourself. You're not supposed to do this. You're not supposed to do that. You're just supposed to this, and this. But the same way with your kids, you're supposed to do this. You're supposed to go here with them. You're supposed to do this with them. You're supposed to do that for them. So it's like everybody in your life depends on you and your ability to work and your ability to make money and fix everything, but never be tired. You don't have that right to need a nap. You don't have that right to need quietness no more, because now, of course, back into the relationship, because when you come home tired, she has to unload because she had a long day and she needs to tell you all about it, and so then it's like, well, where do we go? Who do we call? What do we do? And I think that's like kind of where Unc was getting to. Like, we were never taught, and so I think societally we're not allowed to really have outlets without being shamed for it. At least I could speak for my generation. All right. It's really hard to say, I need to go invent. I need to go and walk. I need to go and do this. It's like, oh, you walking away? You're not a real man. Oh, you can't handle your abilities. You're a real man. You're not a real man. And so we live in that. There's fatigue there, but we don't know we have it, and we ignore it. And then,
I think we see it more than we like to admit, especially with everything that comes across as police brutality. Sometimes that's compassion fatigue that has gone overboard. So now
everything looks like police brutality.
Well, not everything, but when some situations they become numb to the things that happen in the environment that they're in. So
that's what I'm saying.
They treat people like savages when they started out. I want to help people, and then the more they help people, the more it hurts them. The more they do, the more it hurts. The more. So now everything is piling on their shoulders, and they are now numb to the wants and desires of the community, and they think they're doing what's right when they're policing. So now it becomes abuse. Now it becomes you aren't necessarily worried about this because everything looks the same, and now you use words like or phrases, well, that's just how they act. That's just how they are. Because over time, without you getting help, without you dealing with them directly, you put people in a bottle and look at them the same way.
I'm really trying. I truly am. So on one hand, compassion fatigue can be self-inflicted. And on the other hand, compassion fatigue can come from obligations being placed on you that have no business being being placed on you, and you not being able to deal with said obligations correctly. Am I missing something?
I wouldn't say that they're placed on you where they shouldn't be. It's when you don't deal with them. Like, the more you allow these things to happen without communicating, without talking about it, without dealing with what's going on, it piles up, whether it's in your psyche or in your body. You allow it to happen without saying, hey, man, I need to talk. I need to get this off my chest. So you bottle it up, and it has to go somewhere eventually. So it's not that you don't, because, and that's why you see it in certain jobs more or less than just the person doing nothing. You see it with people who actually have a concern and a care for people. And now, after so much of it, it's like, man, I started out in this position to help folks, but now folks misuse me, or the situations got too much for me. I've never had anywhere where I can just go debrief, go and just chill out. So now I'm using substances. Oh, I got to drink this and I'll be all right. I got to smoke this and I'll be okay. Or, you doing this at work and you on fire and you get home. Now you become numb and abusive to your family or something like that, because you didn't deal with the current situations in its time. You allowed them to pile up, and it's too much for you to handle.
Thank you for taking the time out to agree with me, because that is what I am saying. The obligations that I'm talking about are what, and if I'm looking at it from how Tawame was speaking about it, he was saying that initially he was placed in a spot that he didn't have any business in, which came with obligations that he really didn't feel like he should have been fulfilling at that time, and they were placed upon him. He didn't ask for them, and now he's tired from having to do all of these things when they were placed upon him, and he didn't have a choice, and he didn't know that it was okay for him to talk about he wanted a choice. That's what I'm saying. So it could come from either way, but the obligation that the way that Tawame was talking, and to keep it real, the way you were just talking, stuff was put on us that didn't have no business being put on us at the times that they were put on us. You understand what I'm saying? Like, we were put in positions we ain't had no business in. And those positions come with certain responsibilities that we were never trained to deal with properly. And we were never allowed to speak about how this is hurting me. We were never allowed to do that. People just look at you like you soft and say, get over it. It just now became cool to talk about stuff like this. You understand what I'm saying? So that's where I'm coming from. Like, we got put in a position we didn't have no business being put in. And we didn't have a say-so in whether or not we got put in this position. So now we got to deal with it, and now we're talking about it. You understand what I'm saying? So it can be both.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Now, I was gonna say it definitely can be both. That's what I was going to go to, is because it's not always necessarily that it shouldn't be put on us, but it's when we don't know how to create a balance between ourselves and our responsibilities to others, right? Whether we were supposed to have that responsibility to others or not, right? We still have to learn. I think, and that's the problem when it comes to being thrown in the fire young, is you don't know balance. And so you will burn out if you don't know balance, if you haven't been taught, especially in a community where there's a very large amount of fathers not in the home. I'm not going to say not present, because that's not true, but not in the home. So then what you tend to deal with is you don't see that balance. So because you don't see that balance, you don't know how to exhibit it, right? And so now it's not that I shouldn't have been doing cutting the grass and washing the car and doing this. Is that I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how to make a schedule. All right, I'm washing the cars every other week, or I'm cutting the grass every other week, and then this week I'm washing the cars. I'm not going to spend 8 hours outside cutting the grass, washing the car, doing this and doing that every single day, right? We got to understand that. And then at the same time, a lot of us, because we jumped out there into families young, we didn't know how to set some ground rules sometimes. Like, if I'm the only one fixing cars around here, then you shouldn't be able to drive your car into the ground with the expectation I'm going to fix it every 5 days. Quit driving over curves and speeding and turn your brakes up and all this. Like, hey, because I should be able to say, hey, think about what the things I'm responsible for and be thoughtful of me. Because what we don't talk about is that just like us as men, when it comes to women, you want a woman that cleans, but you cannot tear up the house, so she ain't got to spend all day cleaning. If that's what you're
we ain't
asking for.
we ain't got there yet, bro. We ain't got there
I'm
yet.
My
not
bad.
doing. Nope.
Yeah,
My
we
bad.
still in this.
Nope.
But all
Nope.
right, back on the
Nope.
man. My bad. But it's like, hey, I just need you to think.
Wait. Hold on. Let me jump in real quick because time is getting away from us here. So I think it's a balance between what everybody's saying, right? I think sure there were some things placed on us that may or may not have needed to be placed on us, but then we never knew how to deal with it. To Michelle Ray's question, you got some of us. I can't speak for everybody. Some of us didn't have our dads in the home to raise us. Our uncles, sure, but they were uncles. Your uncle don't supersede any parent. So the uncle can't do nothing that mama won't allow him to do, but the uncle can be a valuable asset. But uncle got his own life to live as well, right? So all of these things tend to factor in. And oh yeah, by the way, these men are also recipients of same things that we're recipient of, right? So they were raised in that particular environment to where they had things put on them. They didn't know how to deal with it, so forth and so on. So hopefully the uncles were teaching us from the lessons that they learned through the mistakes that they made because they realized something like we did at a later point in time and was like, nephew, I'm not going to let that happen to you. I'm going to teach you from the source of the things that I've learned, not necessarily through the raw experiences. Now, what you're finding is that we are getting to the place. I believe that it goes from one extreme to the other. So you'll go from a male dominant, you know, um, uh, society to it transfers over. So you have a woman, even though women, it's not a woman dominant society, but women are trying to dominate society. I'll say it that way. And then you'll find that it's moving right back to the center bubble now, to where now it's not that man is trying to dominate woman, it's not that woman is trying to dominate man. We're trying to come together and figure out what these things look like. How can we have these conversations back and forth with one another without trying to sound like we're trying to control each other? I think that's kind of like where we are now. Speaking of which, let's turn the tables now. What did that look like for women? How can you look at these things being placed on women, and how did they um, kind of deal with compassion fatigue as best you can possibly explain? I know I have no women on the panel, but please, women in the chat, by all means, light it up. Let us know.
I was about to say because I have no idea.
Yeah, but you got sisters, you got mothers, you got cousins, you got all those things. What did they share with you?
I mean, I could go by what they say, but given the environment that I lived in and the women that I was around and the information that I gathered after I left, I cannot answer that question objectively. I can't. You understand what I'm saying? I can't. I'm jaded in that because of what I've seen. And I do not feel it would do justice for me to give a jaded answer on this specific topic. I don't. So this is the grown up me saying I don't have it. I don't have enough in me to be objective about that.
Okay.
So again, I don't know.
Okay.
I think that of course there's going to be a level of flawedness in this conversation with 5 men on here, right? But on this aspect, but I would say from my vantage point, right? I think our women were conditioned to take on the world mostly by themselves, right? Yeah, of course, some of them they lean on mamas and friends and aunties for support here and there, but a lot of women were conditioned that taking on the world by themselves is the example of a strong woman. You have to be hyper educated, independent of men, have your own kids that you raise by yourself so you can take on mommy and daddy. You can't let nobody tell you what to do, and you can't have no support, and it's just like just go out there and take on the world, and then when you crash and burn, let everybody shame you for being independent. Like, where does it stop? And that's just from my vantage point. That's as simple as I can make it because I don't know the nuances, right? But that's my vantage.
I think I was raised by my great grandmother, and my great grandmother coming out of all the situations that she had come from. She was hard. She was a hard woman. She carried a pistol, and she spoke her mind. She had her tongue was very sharp. She meant what she said, and you did what she said, or else you paid the consequences. Male, female, whatever, it didn't matter. And when she raised us in that hard manner because she wanted us to survive once we left the house. And what she ended up doing is rearing the girls under her. She made them hyper masculine in a sense to where they had to say, hey, you got to go get it. You got to provide. You got to do this. And so now when we at this age, we get these masculine, not in sexuality, but in nature. We get this, just like we all have this masculine and feminine within when we deal with people. So when we see she's struggling, she's doing this, that, and the other, and we say, man, why is she acting like that? Why don't she be like what, Claire Huxtable? Claire ain't going through what Claire dealing with. She's dealing with a lot of situations. And so we look at them differently. We say, man, they hard and they this, not trying to understand that the things that was pushed on them to do and to be were things that put up walls and built barriers. So now you're dealing with somebody off the rip that you got to break down walls. You got to get to know her and why she's built like that. So when it comes to her compassion fatigue, dealing with men, dealing with the man, coming out of situations where the people that affected her were uncles, the people that affected her were cousins, were brothers, were of that nature. Now she's looking at you like, you supposed to protect me when she's never had protection. So that compassion fatigue is like trust goes out the window, and you have to build it on top of building it before you can even get to know her truly, because she's already built to put up a block. That's why she got her, I got my little stash under the mattress in my shoebox just in case he act up, because trust is not there. So it's some things that she's built up and it's normal to her versus being normal to us, because we look like, I got it. And you telling her you got it, but it's been a lot of people that have let her down. So now when she gets to this point, we don't understand it because we didn't necessarily go through it. We may have saw it from afar or may have heard about it, but we didn't go through it. So, and I got a gang of sisters and a gang of daughters, and I was raised around a bunch of women and with a bunch of women in the house where I was the only male. So I got to see some of this stuff where the hurts that they experienced, I heard about it. So I could hear from it, but I'm not a woman, so I can't tell you from their perspective. I could just tell, my part.
Well, I'm not a woman either, but I'll take a stab at it. And I'm going to simply say, dealing with some of these trifling ninjas, some of these trifling men, regardless of whether or not they picked them or not, it's irrelevant for right now, right? So, and I'm going to speak from a personal standpoint. Sometimes I wasn't crap, just being honest. And I look at some of the pain that I've caused, even my current wife. We've been together for almost 10 years. I can publicly say that there are some things that I wish I could take back, good, bad, or indifferent. And sometimes women can be with men that they really love and they will accept certain things and, and be very compassionate, about certain things, and even have a certain amount of leniency for certain things. And I think sometimes those things are extremely hard. I look at, some older women that I know who dealt with men, and the church told them to stay with their husband, even if they was beating them, even if they was on drugs and all of these different things. And I look at some of the compassion fatigue that came through all of that, so this is Women's Month. So and I'm gonna give a shout out, and I would take some accountability for some of my actions. and just be honest. And sometimes women, like I said, regardless of whether or not they picked them or not, sometimes deal with a lot of compassion fatigue, just dealing with some of the shifty ninjas like me. Well, I would say the former self, my former self.
See, I like that. Because you went the direction I was going to go. Um, as a young boy, raised by my mother in my grandmother's house, it's a lot of things I seen, a lot of things. Um, Back then, it wasn't the people down the street you had to worry about. It was your own family members you had to worry about. Um, you had to fight as a woman. You literally had to fight. Like people think The Color Purple is a good movie. I think The Color Purple is more reality than what most people realize, especially for those people who never lived back then. Women literally lived that type of life. You had to fight. They had to fight their, uncles and cousins. And I'm talking about the senior people. They had to fight them off. Women were objectified. Women were beaten like they were kids because the man was trying to get them in line. So all of those things create some sort of trauma within the life of that person, but they still were expected to do this and do that and whatever the case may be. You're still expected to cook, clean, do all those other things. So you have to realize that, like we talked about previously, these were the examples. These were the things that were forced upon them. They didn't ask for it. It was forced upon them, and they still had to try to find a way to exist in that space, rationalize with those emotions that they have with no training whatsoever. Because talking about how you felt in the Black community back then was not a thing. So they had to figure all these things out. And keep in mind, they're about maybe about maybe 6, 7 generations removed from being a slave, if that. You see what I'm saying? So bad information here begots bad information here begots bad information here begots bad information. It changes slightly, but not by much. And so back then, I'm talking about my great grandmother, right? Back then, my great grandmother, my grandmother, like a lot of that stuff that they experienced came from what a lot of those men learned from, their forefathers from being raised as a slave, because they seen master beat us and they got us in line. So this is what we end up doing. So we got to realize within our own community how we have hurt each other, and then get to the point today where we understand now, instead of doing it via the airways like this, why don't we try connecting via the airways? Recognize that, hey, I might be putting more on you than you can handle. I might be putting more on you than you even asked for, right? Where did I get this notion from that all she's supposed to do is cook and clean? Where did I get that from? You know what I'm saying? I actually know how to cook. I actually clean my own house. So I don't necessarily need those things. So if I can do that, why not do it and help out? You know what I'm saying? If I was like my man Roland, Tommy over here, if I was like Tommy, and I might, be like top chef like he is, because the brother cooks. I see him. He was posting them on Facebook and all that other great stuff. Like, that's a form of helping. So what we got to do is get out of our Roland. What's your card? Say again. You still got your card? He didn't put it down. What we got to do is get out of our egos, right? And stop beating our chest and say, I'm the man, and you're going to do what I say do, or else, right? All of those things. Now, don't get me wrong. Boundaries are real. And that's a whole different, what I'm saying right now is outside of the realm of boundaries. Boundaries is a totally separate conversation that I enjoy having, but it's a way to establish boundaries, right? To where understanding who the boundary that I established is for. And when I understand who my boundary is actually for, then I don't behave as though I use my boundary to cage you. Because when we do that, now we're out of order. So I think having that conversation, and I'm gonna be real with y'all. I had a whole bunch of questions. Yes, go ahead, bro.
No, I was gonna say, I think you still need to address it in this aspect, right? Because boundaries is a whole separate conversation, but there's still a level of talking about boundaries in this conversation as it pertains to this conversation, because I think what tends to happen is when we have the conversation on either side, male or female, about how we help each other alleviate the compassion fatigue, right? What we tend to do is tell the other party, you don't have a right to set boundaries, and it becomes hard to have the conversation for real because reality does not become a factor anymore because it's saying no. Since you heard coach say, and I'm not saying none of the women here would do it, but they said, no, you heard coach say, who told you blah, blah, blah. He cooks and he cleans his house. So you don't get to say blah, 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 or whatever the case may be, right? Whatever that boundary or whatever those standards that y'all create together. I think, and I hear it on both sides. We use these conversations sometimes to shame the other person out of their boundaries. So I think it is a part of this conversation, and it does help lead to more compassion fatigue on one side or the other.
I would agree, but I think for me, if I'm trying to work on me and I know I can't wait until I start to feel the results of the fatigue, I have to have some things in place so that I can take care of this before I get to that point. So that's why exercise is necessary. Eating right is necessary. Having a friend that you can talk to and not just gonna talk at you, not, if you just got to go outside and throw the ball or shoot it or have somebody that you can actually have a conversation that's leading somewhere, not just running your mouth, not just, you got to have somebody to vent to, but you all got to have some wise counsel. You got to have somebody that makes some sense out of everything that you're going through. So I was taught that you need three kinds of friends. So if you have a friend your age, that's somebody you can kick it with. If you have a friend that's younger than you, that's somebody you can lead. But we all need that somebody that can teach us something and can say, boy, you still going up Fool's Hill. And this is something that I've gone through. And now I'm trying to help you so that you won't bump your head how I've bumped it. And when you have that in your life and in place to where when you're doing something and it has something related to trauma, you don't have to wait until it builds up. You can talk to me every day, or we can have a standing appointment. Like, hey, we going to meet on the phone, or we going to meet on the golf course every Wednesday, and we just going to shoot the mess. We just going to talk. We just going to kick it. And whatever comes out of that is between two trusted individuals. So now you don't feel so weighted down. So when you go forward, you're like, man, okay, that's not my stuff to hold on to. I grabbed it, I released it over here, and now I can go forward and continue to do my job without actually, I can't say certain things on here that just drive me crazy without,
All right. Well, I appreciate y'all for answering the question I was going to put up. Give me my ball back, doggone it. In what ways can we foster a culture that balances empathy with emotional boundaries to mitigate compassion fatigue among each other? Gaddy, you mess up my transition again. Me and you gonna fight, but no, I'm joking. Messed it all up, man. I set it up perfectly. What you got? Fostering a culture that balances empathy.
Well, since we're talking as men, I guess we can just keep this conversation going and let the men know that it's okay to actually have boundaries in the first place. How about we just start there? You understand what I'm saying? It's okay to say no sometimes. It's okay to say yes sometimes. It's okay to know when to say it and when not to say it. You can feel bad in the moment, but you have a boundary that you have set, and your boundary should be, I need to take care of me before I take care of somebody else. So how about keeping this conversation going and letting the men know that it's okay to have them? And and no matter what anybody says, man, you having boundaries does not put you in a box of isms or is that you don't belong in.
I want to make sure, right? We're not just talking boundaries. We're talking emotional boundaries now.
Same difference.
That's why I said boundaries is a whole separate conversation, but emotional boundaries is what I want to isolate this to.
Same difference. I can't do this because it hurts me. Plain and simple. It hurts me.
I would,
As much as I want to do this, and as much as I want to see you change, or as much as I want to see you grow, or as much as I want to help you do this, it'll hurt me to do it, so I can't. That's okay. It doesn't mean you hate the other person. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person either. It just means you can't do it. It is what it is. How about we start there? That's an emotional boundary that we should have. Quit allowing a bunch of people to make you feel bad that you can't do something for them right then and right there. Get out my face. I'm sorry. You know what, Coach? I owe you an apology because I said I was going to stop trying to be angry this year. I'm sorry. I'm going to mute my mic now.
Hey, we're only 3 months into it, bro. You still got time.
I would say if I'm speaking to young men, right? Because I think that's the only avenue I could truly speak on. But I think in this, I'm saying some stuff that's good for everybody, right? But when I'm speaking for young men, right? Because it's easy for us, we say have these conversations early, right? So we have to have these conversations in the conversations of getting to know each other. So we must start talking about our do's, our don'ts, our traumas, our hiccups, our likes, our don't likes, and all that other stuff. But I learned that a lot of women in the courting stage, right? And I'm talking about young women, don't speak the same language, right? So we're speaking a language about, or we may be, some of us speak a language about coexistence, right? And a lot of women are coming into this infatuation, and we come into the infatuation stage also with what we want, right? But more so from a physical standpoint, right? But a lot of women come into more of a, what kind of man is he for me? What kind of provider is he for me? Because these are some of the things they're taught, right? Not good, bad, or indifferent, but we understand that. So when we're having these conversations, or when we're in the court, in the dating stage, or whatever the case may be, before we get too deep and too serious, we gotta understand what unhealthy behavior looks like, because everything won't always be said. And so in setting those boundaries, you might say all your boundaries here and there and there and here, but she didn't always hear them. But what she won't listen for them, right? She's not a bad person. That's just how a lot of younger women think. They're not really listening to that part of the conversation. So you have to learn how to acknowledge your boundary when things happen, because in the sense of having empathy, we tend to allow unhealthy behavior to continue, which then means that boundary does not exist, though you stated it, but because you allowed it and you catered to it for the sake of having empathy, for the sake of being, big daddy, whatever, you opened that barrier up and created a freeway, right? So we have to learn how to identify those bad behaviors, those toxic behaviors, and nip that in the butt. Open your mouth and speak. That's what I mean by nip that in the butt. Hey, that's my barrier, right? Hey, no, that's a soft spot. Hey, no, I can't do that right now. Maybe I'll grow, but right now that's not where I'm not there. Let's hold on right there. Because you have to say things out loud, right? And this is just the experience as a young man. I realized that a lot of things that I've complained about in my past relationships were because they were things that I said out of my mouth I did not like, but I didn't nip the actions in the butt. I didn't voice my opinion when things went down. We have to learn, because some of us are just flying along with the wind in this relationship. We're getting comfortable and we're just riding along, and somebody has to stop us and say, I don't like this. And the reason why I say I'm addressing young men, because I think women do a better job saying, no, I don't like that. No, I don't think you should do that. Nope, I don't think you should. But men don't do a good job by creating boundaries, whatever those boundaries are, right? But we know, and we are talking more emotional, but we have to be able to get there and see that toxic behavior and call it out. And I think that creates the precedence going forward. So, but as men, we like to have empathy all the time, so we allow bad behavior, and then a few years later, you're not happy with the situation.
Man, take the L. Take the L. Listen, man. Listen. I guess we need to teach the young boys this too. Setting an emotional boundary could cause you to take an L, or it could cause you to have to square up. Deal with it.
I think what we're talking about here, when we talk about empathy and balancing with culture and everything, is if there's a situation like if any of y'all come to me with any situation that is on your heart and all that other stuff, I'm gonna give you 15 minutes to go on and cry about it. Do your thing, cry, snot. I ain't no judgment. After that, I'm gonna say it like I'm gonna say it, and we ain't gonna even get kicked off. I'm gonna say, dude, grab your nuts. Okay, now it's time for you to man up. Now it's time for you to. How are we gonna fix this thing? How will we move forward with this? Because I can't leave you in the crying state. I can't leave you in a complaining state. Now we got to fix it. And as a man, like if it's a situation where I'm not talking about you crying about some situation. It's your woman, she dumped you and all that other stuff. Yeah, we gonna talk, but at some point you have to come with a situation where you can say, man, how do I move forward? How do I fix this? And I'm empathetic in the beginning. I'm listening and I will let you get it out, but I'm not going to allow you to keep on beating yourself up or to keep on beating somebody else up and blaming and doing all this other stuff because it allows you to stay in the pit and it allows you to continue to bury yourself. Now, we're going to unpack this thing to where now we can deal with it so we can move forward so you aren't burdened by it. And when you face it again, it's not a weight. It's something that you can look at, look in the face, and deal with without the feelings of, oh, I might hurt somebody's feeling. It's not about somebody's feeling at this point. It's about you moving forward for the sanity and sanctity of yourself and the relationship.
I'm gonna approach it from the perspective of that the person that's fostering this culture has it already together. All right. So this is somebody who's, maybe pretty confident in themselves, maybe practices self-care. And I say that to say that what was I getting ready to say? The second time tonight.
Ginkgo biloba.
Man. Second time tonight. Oh, here we go. Is be the example, right? So if you are already that person who kind of has it together, to be the example, that's how you can foster that culture. When you're talking to someone and they're being emotional or whatever like that, just be the example, like show mental stability when you're having a conversation. Practice a life of self-discipline and self-care, and I think that, and then put those emotional boundaries into play when you have the conversation. Like Roland said, give him 15 minutes. You know what I mean? I think that's an emotional boundary that you put into place, that, and you say that, and even when you talk to people, sometimes I think it's okay when someone starts calling and say, hey man, guess what happened in my life? You know what I mean? I think it's okay to kind of check with them and say, all right, well, do you just want to have a conversation and talk about this? Or are you looking for some advice or a solution or something like that? And depending on what you're qualified in, maybe depending on what your answer should be back to them. If you're not qualified in certain things, then maybe pass that person off to somebody else. You know what I mean? And someone else doesn't necessarily have to be an expert. It could be somebody just maybe more qualified, or maybe someone that may be a little bit more compassionate than you. So that's kind of how I see it at the end of the day, is that if you already kind of got it together, just be that example and practice some of those skills and be willing to help teach or walk somebody through some of those other things that you use in your life to be successful. And I think those can kind of help mitigate some of the compassion fatigue.
I like it. I like it. I would start off and for me, I would say that the first thing that we as men need to do is understand the difference between sympathy and empathy, so nobody can try to hold you accountable for not knowing what empathetic is. Being empathetic is really about. Then I would say, don't put your trash in my trash can. We can talk about your trash all day long, but my trash can is for me. Your trash can is for you. Now, if you want to talk about what's in your trash can, I am more than willing to talk about what's in your trash can. I would even talk to you about what's in my trash can. But what I won't do is take my trash can and come put it in your yard. I think that's the thing that we have to be consciously aware of when it comes down to this environment that we're trying to create. Remember, I'm not the most important person in this relationship, and neither are you. We're working toward a goal. If we remember that, then we'll stop holding each other accountable and responsible for not doing what I want you to do when I'm feeling this particular type of way. Sure, when you get emotional, when I get emotional about a thing or whatever the case may be, it's necessary to have a conversation, but we're having a conversation for the sake of understanding, not for the sake of doing, right? Unless I'm in error or you in error, then the idea is for understanding towards change behavior. But I think a lot of times what we do is we kind of get, we got to go all the way down the street and round the corner and uptown and then come back downtown just to go next door. Like it's not that serious. It's really simple, right? If we just go back and look at the concept of a house, right? Everything that's within my property line is my responsibility. So why is it so difficult for us to relate to one another? I can talk to my neighbor. I can even tell my neighbor he got to cut his grass, but I don't have to go and grab my lawnmower and go cut his grass unless I ask him first. That's the thing. I'm not just going to do it now. If he's disabled, that's a whole nother conversation, right? Because we may have an agreement beforehand, and if we have that agreement, then I go and do it because that's the thing that we agreed upon. When it comes down to these emotions, I don't take mine and push it in your yard and overtake your existence and make you feel like, oh my goodness, I got to walk on eggshells because if I say this, this person is going to feel that's a problem. That is a huge problem, right? If I do, this person is going to, that's a problem, right? If that's the place that we exist in, then we're existing in an environment that includes fear. Fear in a relationship is no good. I want to make sure I'm saying that there should be mutual respect and understanding, but fear is not the thing that we should be doing when it comes down to a relationship. That's how we get to this environment to where we balance empathy to mitigate again compassion fatigue. Because if you ever get to the point of existing in an environment, and I'm not just talking relationship now, I'm also talking work environment. If you ever get to the point where you exist in an environment and you're experiencing low grade fear on a consistent basis, you're going to get sick. You're going to get sick fast. And I hate to say it, you're probably going to exist yourself in a grave if you continue doing that. That's the thing that most people, most companies are trying to mitigate. And so what they're doing is they're trying to work within their operational plan, a plan to prevent people from being fatigued and burned out and all of those things, just like it needs to be in the relationship plan as well. But your relationship that you exist in does not take one person, put them on the mountaintop. And if that's the relationship that you exist in, I'm sorry, that's not healthy. So listen, I want to make sure that I appreciate everybody. I love everybody's opinion. I love everybody's input. I like everybody's input in the chat. I was seeing what you guys were saying, but I had a whole bunch of questions. I think I pulled out two of them. That's it, only two. So that just kind of goes to show you that we was winging it tonight, and we were speaking from the heart. And I hope we've served everybody well. But this brings us to our bittersweet moment. I know that we're a little bit above beyond time, so gentlemen, I'm gonna ask that you keep it short, right? So that being said, first up, Chris, I believe that's you.
Okay, I guess I'll keep my short, sweet, to the point. Some compassion fatigue is self-induced. Some compassion fatigue is due to circumstances beyond your control. So in understanding this, I would also well, I'm not even going to say advise. I would just suggest that you try to control your controllables and mitigate. Well, yeah, try to see if you can lessen as much compassion, self-induced compassion fatigue as you can. So that way you could deal with the rest and have a little something for yourself, because you need something for yourself. Yeah, that's my final thought.
Mine is simple as well. It's don't allow others, and don't you do to others allow them to hold you captive emotionally. There's a difference between assistance and responsibility. I can assist you, I can help you, but it's not my responsibility to be everything for you. Some people you have to allow, you cannot allow them to hold you mentally captive, and you can't hold others mentally captive. Everybody needs that time to take care of oneself, so this way we don't end up in that fatigue, and we must be able to voice when we're getting there, so we can continue to be available. So I think this is a part of availability, and that's all I got.
I'll keep my final thought simple too. When it comes to understanding compassion, I think everybody here did a good job of kind of unpacking that bag, and I think right now we all kind of get it a little bit. So what I'll end with is a little one nugget that can help anybody once you start experiencing compassion fatigue, and that is two letters, N and an O. When you put those together, you get a word called no. You will be surprised as how much stress you can eliminate in your life. I know I'm gonna see something about that in the private chat in a minute, but I know one of the things you can do to help eliminate certain things in your life is simply by saying no. When you say no, you create a boundary. You say that I'm not going to accept a certain thing. So I think just, once you find yourself to a place and you are starting to experience some sort of compassion fatigue, one is to say no. And then after that, like Gaddy said earlier and throughout the show, practice, 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 and be intentional about your self care.
I think first and foremost, realize that compassion fatigue is something that's controllable. It's like anger management or anything else, but you have to know the signs, know your limitations, and you got to be able to set boundaries, because when you can feel yourself taking on the responsibility of other people's problems, other people's feelings, and other people's situations, then as you take that on, you taking on the weight of that. And when you do that, you start to weigh yourself down. So instead of doing that, have yourself something to where you can talk about it, somebody that you can talk to, something you can use that's constructive and not destructive in nature. That way you won't be burdened down by other people's situations. And then you won't even find yourself in this predicament. You'll always be in a state where people's feelings and people's emotions aren't overbearing to you, but you can navigate through their situations without taking them on, and help those individuals as well as help yourself from the development of having compassion fatigue.
Yeah, I'm loving all their comments. I will start off by saying, if all you do, like, you need to, search yourself. If all you do is, if well, let me start off like this. If your job is stressful to the point that it actually have you nervous all day, it has you to the point to where you're fearful of doing things wrong because of responses from supervisors or whatever the case may be, you might want to ask yourself a few questions. If you're in a situation to where you feel like you're walking on eggshells constantly, not because there are standards, but because your partner is kind of like backing you in a corner based upon how they feel about certain things. There's some questions that you need to ask yourself. I would say, in my opinion, if you have a large social circle, that might be a problem. there should be a very small group of close-knit friends that you actually have, because that's the only way that you can serve them properly from the standpoint of relationship. If you have a large conglomerate of people that you spend a lot of time with, then you're not a friend to them. You're just an associate to them. And anytime every one of them, just imagine, what if they decide to call you today, like one in the morning, one in between breakfast and lunch, lunchtime, between, like, that's too much, right? So that's what we have to understand. Reduce your social circle, right? Practice self-care. And then again, understand that you can't be everything, everything. I'm gonna say it again. You can't be everything to anybody, but you can do the best you can as long as you're doing it from a healthy space. So that being said, again, I appreciate you guys. I appreciate all my panel members. I love everything you guys brought to the table. I appreciate everybody in the chat. Listen, if you're not a member in the community yet, go to www.totalmindsetshift.com and just go ahead and become a part of the community. It is free. We appreciate and value everybody there, and it's a place that we can speak freely. It's a place where we can share insights, motivational posts, things of that nature. It's what we do in this community. So also another point, if you guys have not gotten your ticket for tomorrow morning, 10:30, we'll be talking about faithfulness and righteousness. So again, 10:30 tomorrow morning. If you haven't gotten your ticket yet, make sure that you get it. Listen, again, we appreciate you. We value you. Everybody have a great rest of your evening. Have a fantastic weekend. If I don't see you tomorrow, listen, let the best version of yourself be a blessing to someone else.